On October 22, 2021, Darryl Gilland and his fiancée Samantha Pohlman were new tenants renting out a house in Kansas City, Missouri. It had been about a week since they lived there, and between them and their landlord, Gordon McBeth, they made an agreement that he would lower the rental amount because the couple would help in remodeling his home. Because the heat appliance still was not working, Gilland promptly grabbed his phone to text his landlord, Gordon, about this matter. Via messages, Gordon sounded quite compliant and helpful even, texting, "Yeah, I'll come over and we'll fix that." In reality, there was quite a contrast. Witnesses reported seeing Gordon driving recklessly on his way to his tenants, and upon arrival, he switched up immediately and started to yell at the two of them, claiming that they were asking for too much and that they had become burdens now. He started to throw items at Samantha, and when Gillard tried to intervene, that seemed to be the final straw for Gordon. He quickly pulled out a gigantic hunting-style knife and started to stab Gillard 30 times. Samantha started screaming at this gruesome sight and quickly ran out of the house to seek help from the neighbors, who all heard her high-pitched cries, describing it as horrific. One of the brave neighbors took matters into his own hands and grabbed his personal firearm and ran into the house and pointed it straight at Gordon, yelling at him to get on the ground. Unfortunately, at around this time, Gillard was in critical condition. By the time the police and paramedics arrived, Gillard was pronounced dead in his fiance's arms, who was telling him moments before he had died that it was going to be okay and that the ambulance was coming and that, most importantly, she loved him. Gordon was immediately held on a $1 million bond and entered a plea of not guilty. He faces a second-degree murder charge as well as an armed criminal charge. No one understood why Gordon stabbed Billard to death, as he was a new tenant and they seemingly got along and negotiated well for the week that they did know each other. Whether he was having a rough day or it was premeditated, it is all up in the air. Gillard's father confidently believes that this was all premeditated, and he wanted the second-degree charge to turn into a first-degree one, while his mother and most of the public believed that her son was killed over nothing. While Gordon's personal life isn't that known, we can only make assumptions as to what was going through his thick brain that day. I mean, it's not like these were uncooperative and rowdy tenants, and they were not even behind on rent. The fact that he went over to their place with a hunter-style weapon with him, I mean, it had to have been planned because people don't typically run around with knives like that on them. As long as he had a reason to carry that weapon with him, I think it was definitely thought out. How long he had planned it shouldn't even be considered, given the outcome of all of this. Why he most likely planned this out, however, is a big mystery. Did he do it in cold blood because of external reasons beyond the scope of what we all saw? Did his one-week-old tenant asking him to fix the heating trigger something from his past, where he perhaps saw his previous and bothersome tenants in Darryl? At this point, we can only just hope Gordon gets the maximum sentence, because absolutely nothing justifies the mess he made. Just imagine this coming at you and ending your existence just like that for no reason. Straight nightmare fuel. Now, this next case is even creepier, you guys, and this was a 15-year-old cold case that was just recently solved. Unlike the previous landlord, who seemingly killed for no reason, this one now involves a homeowner from Texas named Jimmy Wolfenbarger, who actually had a documented shift in relationship with his tenant Holly Simmons, who, for reference, was a single mother. For the longest time, friends and families would describe their relationship as just a normal and benevolent landlord and tenant. Suddenly, between 6 to 7 months before Holly vanished, things began to get very weird between the two of them. Jimmy started to go back and forth with Holly over things that really should not have concerned him as a landlord. For example, he would fight about one of her daughters, and even relatives started to get uncomfortable with visiting Holly just because of him. Coworkers began to notice that Jimmy was frequently visiting her workplace as well. There was a reported instance from Holly's friend where she heard Holly on the phone saying that she was starting to have problems with Jimmy and that she wanted to move out soon. To that, she added something eerie, stating that she had to speak quieter because she couldn't tell if he was listening. Her own daughter recalled a moment where her mom openly expressed her frustration with him, exclaiming, quote, "Stay away, just be a landlord, just stay away," end quote. It appeared that her pleas went through deaf ears when in 2000 she disappeared after dropping her daughter off to school before 7 11 a.m. Inside the home, all of her essentials were still there, such as her purse, phone, car keys, and her vehicle, though there was not a single trace of her. Years later, in 2009, Simmons was deemed as the Lady of the Lake when her lifeless body was discovered 7 miles away from her house and 18 feet deep in an aluminum boat. Placed on top of her were concrete bags weighing about 600 pounds. She had been strangled to death with what was believed to be a cord or a wire of some sort. For nearly 6 years, Holly's family was left in the dark, and they had always believed that Jimmy was the perpetrator because he openly had disputes with Holly over any small thing. Holly's family held onto the sliver of hope that one day Jimmy would get caught. Their deepest wishes were answered in 2009 when they received a phone call at 11 o'clock in the morning. The case that was once cold was reignited when the Texas Ranger reinvestigated it. According to authorities, there was physical evidence in the house that something happened, and that this was a personal killing, meaning that whoever did target her likely knew her too. Additionally, they believed that there was at least one other person that helped with disposing of the body in such a manner. Jimmy had turned himself in and was indicted by a grand jury. He was held on a $2 million bond. Families and acquaintances were frustrated for a majority of the case because although they were informed that he was the main suspect, there was never enough evidence to tie him to the murder. And even though a grand jury indicted him, Jimmy was released on bond, but he was forced to give up his passport. We can only hope that he doesn't run off and that justice gets served soon. Now, this Jimmy case was quite eerie to me because no one really knows what caused the sudden change in the relationship. Like, I'm wondering what was said between the two, because given what was reported by witnesses, I'm talking friends and family, Jimmy really seemed to be quickly blending the line between landlords and tenants. Not only was he described as being overbearing, but the fact that Holly didn't even feel comfortable speaking in her own house gives me stalker vibes from Jimmy. It's scary because he's a landlord, and by default, he has full access to the house. You know what I mean? So considering this, I'm almost positive that there were other instances where he would just pop up out of nowhere, totally uninvited, and just make himself at home and insert himself into their lives. So by the same token, it's not unreasonable to believe that he accessed her home that day and just murdered her. Now, this is just speculation, but the fact that she was scared to speak is what leads me to believe that there was a stalker situation going on here. I'm not sure if he wanted to feel powerful or if he felt lonely and saw that she was single and thought it was okay to maybe force something that Holly didn't really want happening. That's probably why she told him to stay as a landlord, because he most likely was trying to act like something more. A boyfriend, perhaps? A creepy one at that. What do you guys think, and what do you think about this second person helping out with hiding the body? If he did have an accomplice, I really do hope that comes to light as well. And I'm not sure whose tail he's trying to cover here, but I'm guessing it might be another family member of his, perhaps. A real-life horror film was quite literally in the works here. The relationship between a landlord and a tenant should entail mutual respect, complying by the rules, and staying within the boundaries deemed appropriate. In an ideal world, when both the tenant and homeowner execute that lease, any misunderstandings about what each of their roles are should cease. But it's not an ideal world, and oftentimes we see both parties alike not abiding by the written rules. I mean, look at what these landlords did here. Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are about either cases from this video in the comment section below, because I seriously look forward to reading them. The first case, I mean, talk about the ridiculous extent of brutality and senselessness combined. And you guys, heads up, I am on social media, so if you want to connect with me on other platforms, my links are in the description below, so feel free to follow me. As always, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting content.